For thousands of years, the sky was not just a landscape, but a reflection of humanity's quests, concerns, and hopes. The stars, planets, and the endless depth of the sky offered ancient civilizations a map of destiny. Each movement, each position, carried meaning and guided people to the right time and the right decisions. But solving these celestial secrets was never easy. Those stars, which turned into points of light for us, had once become a mysterious compass that shaped the destiny of entire civilizations. How did we find meaning in our lives by looking at the sky for centuries? When did astrology become a science and a belief? And today, how deep a trace has this adventure that lasted thousands of years left? Come, let's journey together into the depths of history, step into the mysterious labyrinth of the sky, and embark on an exploration into the magical history of astrology. The birth of astrology began thousands of years ago in the fertile lands of Mesopotamia. In the 4000s BC, the Sumerians were trying to understand the rhythm of the universe by looking at the sky. For them, the stars were not just points of light. Each one was a story, a sign, an oracle. In the ziggurat temples, priests dedicated the night to unraveling the deep secrets of the sky. They noticed that lunar and solar eclipses repeated themselves in certain cycles. Each movement determined the order of their lives. Time was a map guided by the stars. However, it was the Babylonians who systematized astrology. In the 19th century BC, priests in Babylon not only observed the movements of the planets in the sky, but also began to record the effects of these movements on people. Over time, these observations created a deep belief that the planets and stars shape not only the order of the universe, but also the history of humanity. The Babylonians believed that every movement in the sky was a prophecy, a sign. The movement of a planet was not just a natural event, it was a message about the fate of a people. The priests in Babylon made their efforts to make sense of the sky much more systematic. In their text, called Enuma Anu Enlil, there were 70 tablets on which they carefully recorded the movements of the planets, lunar eclipses, and other celestial events. These tablets were not only astronomical observations, but also prophecies written to make sense of the future. Each text was like a compass that shaped the future of a people and explained the rhythm of life. Lunar eclipses were the most important part of these prophecies, because in Babylon, a lunar eclipse was not just a natural event, but a sign that had great meaning for the empire. A lunar eclipse could indicate a great disaster in Babylon. Everything from the dethronement of the king to the unhappiness of the people was associated with these sacred celestial signs. A lunar eclipse symbolized the fall of the ruler and created great fear among the people. This fear would often lead to the temporary transfer of the throne to a deputy, because the people believed that these signs in the sky were the will of the gods. The kings in Babylon knew this astrological information very well, because every movement in the sky affected not only the mood of the people, but also the way the state was governed. The movement of a planet could determine the future of the government, affect the course of wars, and change the course of trade. The kings listened to astrological prophecies seriously, and from time to time they called astrologers and priests to shape government policies according to the signs in the sky. This information was not just advice, but also a necessity. Decisions in Babylon were no longer based solely on the ruler's views, but also on the messages of the sky. The fate of the rulers and the people depended on the movements of the planets and other signs in the sky. Astrology had become a powerful tool that affected not only individual lives, but also the entire state administration. Kings could use this cosmic knowledge to guide the people's mood, decide on wars, and even shape the future of their empires. After Mesopotamia, the knowledge of astrology was carried to Egypt. However, astrology in Egypt was more than just a scientific observation. It was at the heart of an entire culture. Egyptians regarded the sky not only as a guide to the stars, but also as a guide to all aspects of life. For this reason, the pyramids were not just monuments where kings embarked on their final journeys. They were also a concrete symbol of their sacred ties with the universe. In Egypt, astrology played a particularly religious and administrative role. Astronomical observations were so important that they shaped the government policies of the pharaohs and the welfare of society. Priests in Egypt regarded the sky and the stars as signs conveying the messages of the gods. Each celestial event was linked to events on Earth and directly affected the lives of the people. The foundations of astrology in Egypt can be clearly seen in the construction of the pyramids and the creation of the Egyptian calendar. For example, the Orion constellation was the symbol of the god Osiris, and the Egyptians wanted to strengthen their connection with the world of the dead by aligning their pyramids with this constellation. This alignment of the pyramids was considered not only a religious belief, but also a philosophy of life that merged with the sky. This alignment was seen as part of the universal order of the stars, and the pyramids were built as a reflection of this order on Earth. The Sirius star played a vital role in the Egyptian agricultural calendar. The first appearance and disappearance of this star heralded the beginning of the floods of the Nile River. The rise of the river marked the beginning of the period that the Egyptians determined for agriculture. Following the Sirius cycle created a calendar system that directly affected the lives of the Egyptian people. This astronomical guide was a fundamental element that shaped Egypt's agriculture and economy. The accuracy and efficiency of the agricultural calendar depended entirely on the signs of the sky. Astrology also became a tool that shaped the destinies of individuals in Egypt. Each individual received certain symbols according to the movements of the stars and planets in the sky at the time of their birth. These symbols helped individuals understand their life paths, difficulties, achievements, and destinies. The zodiac system we know today was built on Egyptian astrological observations and symbolism. Egyptian astrological knowledge was deeply connected not only to the land, but also to the destinies of individuals. Prominent priests and astrologers tried to analyze the effects of the stars on people's lives by drawing up people's birth charts. One of the most well-known names working in this field in Egypt is the priest Imhotep. Imhotep was both a medical scholar and an astronomer. His astrological knowledge played an important role in how government was shaped in Egypt and how individuals' lives were guided. At the same time, astral observations were accepted as guides that strengthened the people's ties with nature and the universe. Apart from these, astrologers in Egypt made important discoveries about the sky by making various astronomical calculations to record the stars and planetary movements. Egyptians accurately determined the cycles of time and seasons, especially by observing the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. These observations were not only based on agriculture, but also influenced social rituals and government decisions. The moment of a person's birth was seen as a turning point that determined not only their personal destiny, but also the general direction of society. In Egypt, astrology tried to solve the secrets of the sky not only for kings, but also for every individual. Egyptian philosophy taught that the stars shaped the inner journeys of individuals. Zodiac signs were a guide not only to the cycles of nature but also to the depths of the human soul. Egyptians used the sky as a map guiding each individual's inner journey. Personal maps shaped with astrological symbols were a roadmap for understanding not only a person's destiny but also their soul. Understanding how astrology became so important in Egypt requires going beyond just an old belief. This information shaped Egypt's social structure, culture, and history. The paths followed by the stars became a tool for making sense of the lives of the Egyptian people and guiding them. This deep knowledge was one of the foundations of Egypt's great achievements and long-lasting civilization. After Mesopotamia and Egypt, astrology showed a revolutionary development in ancient Greece. Greek philosophers began to understand the secrets of the sky and took the information they received from the Babylonians one step further. Greek thinkers began to adopt a scientific and mathematical approach to understanding celestial events. In Greece, astrology became not only a means of prophecy, but also an understanding that combined philosophy, mathematics, and science. Pythagoras examined the movements of the planets with a mathematical language and tried to understand the harmony and order of the universe. According to Pythagoras, the regular movements between the planets created a musical harmony in the universe. This theory was called the music of the planets, or cosmic harmony. Pythagoras saw mathematical relationships as the notes of a kind of universal melody. This idea allowed us to understand astrology not only as a means of prophecy, but also as a universal language. Another important figure is Hipparchus. Hipparchus examined the sky in more detail, divided the zodiac into 12 equal parts, and while laying the foundations of astronomy, he also put astrology into a mathematical form. Hipparchus studied the stars in the sky, and by precisely measuring the heavens, he created the first star catalogues and achieved significant success in measuring the movement of the sun. Ptolemy laid the foundations of modern astrology with his work Tetrabiblos, and created a system that connected the effects of the sky to people's lives. Ptolemy tried to explain the effects of the planets on people's lives by examining their movements. His works helped ancient astrology to build a bridge that unified philosophical, religious, and scientific thought. Tetrabiblos is an important masterpiece in which Ptolemy transformed astrology into a mathematical discipline and made it a universal model. In ancient Greece, astrology also directly affected state administration. For example, Ptolemy, one of the most important astrologers in Greece, used astrology as a roadmap that would shape the future of the government and the people. Ptolemy wrote down the universal laws of celestial and planetary movements in his work called Almagest. This text comprehensively examined not only the foundations of astronomy, but also the effects of astrology. In Greece, astrology was intertwined with the decisions of state administration. Philosophers accepted the symbols in the sky as important signs that shaped the future of the state. In addition, astrology was used to shape the personal destinies of individuals in Greek society. For example, Hipparchus, an astronomer and philosopher who was a student of Aristotle, accepted the sky as a kind of map and argued that people's life paths were determined in line with this map. When it came to the Roman Empire, astrology became a decisive tool in state administration. Great leaders such as Caesar and Augustus made critical decisions according to the movements of the planets and stars. Emperors shaped their victories and government policies by following the signs in the sky. In Rome, the planets were no longer just a scientific subject, but also a reflection of the powers of the gods. Of course. Let's examine the historical progression of astrology in more depth. Let's take a much more comprehensive look at how astrology took shape around the world, how different cultures contributed, and how it evolved over time. The foundations of astrology began in Mesopotamia. Babylon was one of the first civilizations to systematically record and develop astrological knowledge of the ancient world. Babylonian astronomers observed the sky very carefully and realized that the movements of the planets could be related to events on Earth. During this period, the zodiac emerged. Astronomers in Babylon investigated how the movements of the stars and planets could affect state affairs, agriculture, warfare, and individual life. Babylonian astrology was directly linked to prophecies, and these prophecies were deeply connected to the beliefs of the people. Babylonian astronomers believed that the gods had an impact on the functioning of the world, and astrology was a tool to solve this functioning. In Egypt, the focus was particularly on the influence of gods such as Osiris and Isis and the stars. Egypt was another civilization where astrology was deeply studied. The Egyptians began to practice both astronomy and astrology by associating them with pyramids and other structures. In Egypt, the movements in the sky symbolized the cycle of life and death. The sun god Ra and the moon goddess Isis symbolized the powers behind the celestial bodies, and their movements affected the fate of the people. This belief became the basis of Egyptian astrology. In particular, the studies conducted in the Alexandrian school were where astrologers began to associate the zodiac map with people's personal characteristics. The astrological maps developed here were a means of determining the life path and characteristics of individuals. When astrology passed from Mesopotamia and Egypt to Greece, a more mathematical and scientific approach was brought to celestial observations. Pythagoras suggested that the movements of the planets constituted a kind of music and universal harmony. He discovered that the movements of the planets had a mathematical structure and called it planetary harmony. In Greece, Hipparchus divided the zodiac into 12 signs by examining the sky more systematically. This helped to integrate astrology with astronomy and to establish a scientific basis for the effects of the movements of the stars and planets in the sky on human life. Later, Ptolemy combined astronomy and astrology and systematized this information in his work Tetrabiblos. Ptolemy was one of the first scientists to attempt to place astrology in a scientific framework by correlating planetary movements with birth charts and their effects on the world. In Rome, astrology became an important tool, especially for rulers. Roman emperors such as Caesar and Augustus used astrology as a system to guide government affairs, victory strategies, and individual administrative decisions. Emperors tried to shape the future of the state in line with the information they received from astrologers. Here, astrology provided guidance that affected not only individual destiny, but also the destiny of society. While astrology was largely forgotten in the West during the Middle Ages, this ancient branch of science was preserved and developed in the Islamic world. In scientific centers such as the House of Wisdom, ancient Greek and Roman texts were translated into Arabic. This allowed astrology to become knowledge based on a scientific basis. Al-Biruni and Ibn Sina combined astrology not only with understanding the influence of the sky, but also with medicine and astronomy, making astrology a multifaceted branch of science. Al-Biruni's discovery of the aspects of planetary movements that affect people's lives, and Ibn Sina's use of astrology in the medical field, led to astrology being used in the Middle Ages, not only as a means of prophecy but also as a branch of science that developed a deep understanding of people's health. During the Renaissance, astrology began to revive in the West. Famous names such as Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Johannes Kepler, and Tycho Brahe began to use astrology as a source of inspiration in their art and scientific studies. During this period, the boundaries between astronomy and astrology became increasingly blurred. Kepler and Brahe, in particular, used astrological information to calculate the movements of the planets and to examine the relationship between the sky and the Earth. Kepler contributed to the scientific foundations of astrology by trying to explain the movements of the planets in a more scientific way. During this period, astrology began to be accepted as a branch of science aimed at understanding the universal order of celestial bodies and their effects on people's lives, beyond being a means of prophecy. Astrology not only developed in the Western and Islamic worlds, but also held an important place in Asian cultures. Chinese astrology has a zodiac system that works with 12-year cycles. Each year is associated with an animal, and certain characteristics of these animals affect people's characters and lives. In India, Vedic astrology, unlike Western astrology, is based more on calculations and birth charts to determine the impact of the planets on human life. Jyotish Shastra forms the basis of Hindu astrology, where the positions of the planets are used to determine the spiritual development and destiny of individuals. In the 7th century, astrology's popularity increased again in the West and many parts of the world. Carl Jung studied astrology in depth in a psychological sense, using astrology as a tool to understand the individual subconscious. In addition, new technologies and calculation methods have made it possible to draw astrological charts more accurately. In conclusion, the history of astrology covers an evolutionary process that lasted thousands of years. Every culture has tried to unravel the secrets of the sky and applied these secrets to human life. Developing in different regions such as Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, Rome, the Islamic world and Europe, astrology has gradually transcended scientific and cultural boundaries, finding a place for itself in almost every society in the world and continuing to guide people. The stars are always above, always there. This journey we started thousands of years ago is still with us in the modern world. Astrology, as an ancient science, has carried the wisdom of many cultures throughout history. However, today this ancient knowledge is appearing before us in a brand new form. Once upon a time, astrology was a guide that only rulers, nobles, or the elite could access. Today, however, we can examine birth charts and follow the positions and movements of the planets, even on the screen of a smartphone. With the influence of social media, astrology appeals to a wider audience, and more people are using this ancient science to make sense of their own lives. Modern astrology not only explores individual destiny, it has also become a tool that analyzes social changes, global events, and psychological dynamics. Astrology has evolved greatly from being a guide on inner journeys to being a tool of discovery aimed at delving into the depths of human history and the individual soul. Today, the information provided by astrology combines with fields such as psychology, sociology, philosophy, and even economics to create a more comprehensive perspective. Stars, planets, and zodiac signs are no longer just symbols of mythological figures of the past. Today, astrology is also considered a kind of subconscious map. Many people use astrology as a guide for personal development, career, and even health. Relationships, personality analysis, life goals, and emotional balance are shaped by the guidance provided by astrology. Knowing which planet is in which house helps people reach deeper insights. This ancient wisdom, combined with the opportunities offered by technology, has made astrology more accessible and practical. Astrology is no longer an art form, but also a scientific discovery. And every day, more research is being done on how the movements in the sky reflect on our personal lives. Astrology has become a tool that tries to make sense not only of individual lives, but also of global events. Today, astrology has gone beyond being a lifestyle, a philosophy, a guide, and has become a part of the holistic understanding of social and personal health. In order to provide emotional, mental, and physical balance, astrology continues to exist not only as a prophecy, but as a branch of science that delves into the depths of the human soul. Astrology, combined with both the wisdom of the past and the scientific approach of today, continues an endless exploration. And so, with the rotation of another planet, our journey continues. The stars are always watching us, and we are one step closer to solving their secrets. The future is written in the sky, and with this celestial guidance, we continue to discover our own path. Astrology is not just a science, it is a journey. From the profound wisdom of the past to the discoveries of today, each step reveals more of the secrets of the universe. With this ancient knowledge, we continue our inner journey and shape the future by combining all the traces in human history. The stars are up there and we are getting a little closer to them